This video walks through that early world, using original paintings and engravings from the time. These scenes were created by artists who stood in these places and recorded what they saw. With those images and modern reconstruction tools, we can look back and understand what New York felt like before it became the city we recognize. Let's begin in Manhattan in the year 1746. When we cross the East River into Manhattan, the atmosphere changes immediately. This image from 1746 shows the ferry landing at the foot of Wall Street. At that time, Wall Street led directly to the river, and the ferry was one of the busiest places in town. People crossed constantly between Manhattan and Brooklyn. Merchants carried goods. Travelers rode on horseback. Sailors docked their boats and tied them along the landing. You can see a pavilion where passengers waited for the next ferry, and behind it are buildings that still reflect the old Dutch architecture from New Amsterdam. The image brings us into a cold, Brooklyn morning during the winter of 1760. Brooklyn at this time was not an urban center. It was rural and spread out, with families living in small wooden houses surrounded by fields, barns, and simple roads. When snow arrived, life slowed down even more. In this scene, you can see people cutting wood, gathering supplies, and talking in small groups. Children play near the road. A horse stands quietly near a sled. The houses are modest and built close to the ground, and smoke drifts from the chimneys as families try to keep warm. This part of Brooklyn was still shaped by the rhythms of agriculture. Most families grew their own food, kept livestock, and relied on trade with nearby towns. A day in winter meant staying warm, preparing meals, and doing whatever work needed to be done to get through the colder months. By 1763, the British firmly controlled New York, and the city was becoming a more significant colonial port. This view of Fort George, which stood at the southern tip of Manhattan, reminds us of how important the harbor was to the city's economy and security. In the image, you can see ships of various sizes sailing into the harbor. Some are merchant ships carrying goods, while others belong to the British Navy. Fort George sits on the shoreline with cannons aimed out toward the water. The British flag marks the site clearly. When we move farther north, the city becomes quiet again. This view of Harlem from 1765 looks nothing like the Harlem we know today. It was mostly farmland and open landscape. The houses were small and separated by long stretches of grass, trees, and gently sloping terrain. In the painting, you can see a few boats on the water. Families likely used these small boats to fish or travel short distances. The forests behind the houses appear thick and untouched. The entire area feels calm and slow. If you picture Manhattan today, it can be hard to imagine that large parts of the island were once rural like this. Even in the mid-17th century, development had not yet reached this far north. People who lived in Harlem worked the land, raised animals, and lived at a peaceful distance from the busy port downtown. A decade later, the atmosphere in New York is no longer calm. The harbor in 1775 was intense and crowded. Ships were being built, loaded, and repaired every day. Workers filled the docks. British soldiers stood beside sailors and merchants. Supplies moved constantly between the warehouses and the water. This was the beginning of the American Revolution, so tension was high. New York's location made it valuable to both the British and the colonists. Whoever controlled the harbor controlled a major strategic advantage. You can see multiple types of boats in the image. Some are large merchant ships. Others are small rowboats used to move people and cargo back and forth. The buildings along the shore are warehouses and workshops. In the same year, New York played a quiet but meaningful role in improving communication across the colonies. This building was one of the early postal centers in the city. and Benjamin Franklin helped organize the postal routes that shifted how information traveled. The idea of receiving news quickly was still new. Letters took days or weeks to travel across the colonies. Newspapers were not printed as often and were sometimes delayed. The postal system changed that. For the first time, information could move more predictably. The post office helped spread the ideas that fueled the revolution. Political writing, reports from other colonies, and updates about British actions all moved through here. By 1776, New York was no longer a small colonial town. It had become a large settlement with busy wharves, rows of homes, multiple churches, and steady movement on the water. The city's waterfront shows a place that was ready to grow into something far larger. Ships fill the harbor. Houses stand close together. The shoreline is more defined, and the entire area looks more organized than it did in earlier years. This is the moment when New York begins to look more like a major city. The year 1776 is important for another reason. The Declaration of Independence was signed, and the colonies were officially in open rebellion. New York's size and location made it a target for both sides. The city was valuable, and both armies wanted control of it. This waterfront scene shows the city at the edge of a major conflict. After the Battle of Long Island, the British captured New York. They would hold it for the remainder of the Revolutionary War, from 1776 until 1783. The occupation changed daily life for everyone living in the city. The image shows British soldiers marching through the streets. Officers ride on horseback. Civilians stand on the sidewalks and watch quietly. The scene feels controlled, but underneath it, there must have been fear, tension, and uncertainty. During the occupation, fires destroyed parts of the city. Supplies were often limited. People were forced to choose sides or keep their opinions hidden. New York also became a center for British military operations. It was full of soldiers, prisoners, spies, and political activity. For 7 years, New Yorkers lived under foreign rule. When the war finally ended and the British left, the city had changed physically and emotionally. But the end of the occupation also opened the door for a new beginning. These images show a version of New York that most people never imagine. A place of snow-covered villages, quiet farmland, busy docks, and crowded colonial streets. A place shaped by everyday people who lived through dramatic change. By the time the revolution ended, New York was ready to grow into a new role. It would soon become the temporary capital of the United States, and later, one of the greatest port cities in the world. This early history reminds us that New York has always been shaped by movement, trade, conflict, and community. Even in the 1700s, the city was already becoming something larger than itself. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this look into New York before it became the city we know today.